Superintendent.
Thank you, Chair Arlen. I think what we've seen in the past couple of weeks is the passion that Duluthians have for our community and for our children and about education. And I'm proud of the discourse that has happened. I think that it's been a very healthy conversation. And that conversation has really been around the impacts for both organizations. The other night after the listening session, I was talking with Mr. Goosens, and we both agreed that there were times during the night where we wanted to stand up and correct some misinformation, but it really wasn't the time or place for that because we were listening to what people had to say. So we're both in agreement that there is misinformation that has been shared. And sometimes that just speaks to the level of knowledge we have about all these things. And I think it's important that we not confuse the misinformation with the information. And it's been spoken to a few times tonight that this isn't a popularity contest. It's not how many people can line up and speak to one side or the other. It really boils down to the facts and the implications for both organizations. A lot of the emails that I've received, and probably a few hundred at this point, talk about relief of taxes by selling this building to the Tisher Creek Company. But I want to be clear that there's tax payments involved either way, because the lease aid that would be used is also tax money. And I think that was one of the biggest confusion points for both sides, was how this, what the implications were for taxes. And so I just wanted to clear that up. There are pros and cons for both organizations. And I'm glad that you've taken the time to listen to the community, to allow for discourse to happen. And I think that you're well prepared to make a decision tonight. Oh.
Superintendent.
Just a process thing about what we're doing. Remember, Lothi chose the same resolution number as the resolution that was chosen, and so we can't have two resolutions with the same number.
Member Welty, I would, if you are okay with this, and Member Johnson, who seconded it, it could be B3163556 instead of 3. Or 3356 instead of.
That's the executive closed session. Let's make it 7. No objection.
Okay.
3357.
7. Is that clear, Melinda?
It is. Can we go with 8?
We'll go with 8. We're going with 8. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate the process and attention to detail. Member Welty.
I can sympathize with the superintendent when he talks about misinformation. I certainly have noticed misinformation on both sides. And there's just simply too much to go through, as Mr. Goosen said when he was here. I attempted to do that on my blog, and I probably don't get everything 100% correct, but I have been bird dogging this particular issue for 20 years, because I was on the board that originally considered Edison, and I followed its ups and downs, the politics, and things of that sort. I would like to make one fine, have a little fine point to add to Superintendent Grunset's comment about the money used to purchase Central being taxpayer money. That's absolutely true. But I think the people of Duluth should know that, well, this is tax money. This has one particular advantage that appeals to me as somebody who is found great fault with the red plan and the $500 million that raised from us. That's all from property taxes. It's a regressive tax, not based on people's wealth, but on their homes and property. In the case of this purchase, it's state lease aid, and it's a pot of money the state legislature set up for charter schools across the state, and it comes from the state's coffers, not property tax money, but from sales tax money and income tax money. And I've never quite forgiven the state of Minnesota for not looking at the red plan more closely, and I blame them for many of the shortcomings we've discovered since its adoption, and currently the $3.3 million debt probably could be laid at the feet of the red plan. I do take a great deal of satisfaction in thinking that, by gosh, the state that kind of let down Duluth on the red plan is having to give lease aid money, state money, of which we only contribute about 2%, because that's all the more we are of the state's population. I just love the fact that it's the state that is contributing this money that we can put into the Duluth public schools if we accept an offer, and that our children who have been wronged by some of the difficulties of the red plan will get a little bit of something from the state, which I think should have been watching us a little closer. That's all I want to add.
Thank you. Just want to take a brief moment to comment that, because I've been looking at my role to actually see someone who's a band teacher at Central for many years, Mr. Lightfried, in the audience. And I've been thinking a lot about how I took percussion as a 7th grader and then moved into choir at Central. And see a colleague see someone I did theater with, Chris Berta, in the back. But what I learned from that is that when you have the band, there's all the different roles and all the different people. And what I learned from the percussion session was that you're there to keep the beat, and you can do a really good job in a band or in a community of making your cymbals sound really loud and overcome everything else. You can do a wonderful job of having one section sound louder, but our community has an opportunity to highlight this property. To have this property be used in a way that actually belongs back into our community, that's able to be redeveloped as something that our whole community can actually spend time with. We as a board, we've heard a lot about competition. We've heard a lot about the decision about our competitor to be able to do this. They have a decision of whether to build. We have the decision of whether to sell. And this evening, I do plan to vote. I will not be in favor of either of these, because even though there's a lot of really loud cymbals and a lot of strong people, I've heard from many people. I'm so appreciative of the number of people that we've heard from. Just hearing Ms. Welcome this evening talk about 3,513 people. But also another number that keeps running through the back of my head is the 11,064 people that checked next to my name and said that they would ask me to do research and ask me to look into the ramifications of the long-term loss. I understand that. And so there's been a lot of misinformation that has come back and forth. I've heard that. I saw an email come through about many of the different things. And what Mr. Goosens and I at the end of the night said the other night was that either way, we need to be working together, no matter where the high schools are. And I see him nodding his head in favor in the back. But what this does come back down to is, what does it look like? We have a lot of opportunity with the new administration in our community, new partners, new leadership in the city, in our city council, and in our administration, as well as new ways with our county to find ways to develop this land. And so I wish them the best, but I will not be supporting them this evening, and do look forward to working alongside our community. Member Sandsted.
Thank you, Chair. Like you, I'm going to be a little bit more direct in this and pare it down to the question of whether or not we should sell the central site to Edison. Whatever the details are, I'm not in favor of selling to Edison. I don't think that it's a good investment for our community. There's two main reasons that I would oppose the sale to Edison. The first is the financial implications for ISD 709 in the long term. And the second is because we govern a public school district and we must keep the interests of our students foremost in our decision making. And the sale would harm the interests of our public school students. So on the first point, as the treasurer, I feel like I have to look extra carefully at the numbers here. On the plus side of this, if we voted to sell to Edison, based just simply on what I understand the offer to be of $14.2 million for the entire site, no restrictions. Sure, that's debatable, or negotiable. My understanding is that Edison would need to have a certain number of students in order to obtain the state financing to be able to pay rent on the site. And so we're talking a significant number of students at a minimum. So we would be able to get $14 million from the sale. That money wouldn't resolve any of our long-term budget issues. We do have a $3 million deficit this year. We could add in seventh period back into our middle and high schools for a few years with that money, but then we would have to find another source again. We could reduce our outstanding bond debt by a tiny percentage with this money. It wouldn't go far. So on the negative financial side, if we accepted this offer, there's a guaranteed loss of state revenue in per pupil student funding. And I believe that the loss would be much more significant at the central site than at the other site that Edison is considered. In 2014, we received $7,735 per pupil from the state of Minnesota. And so if Edison filled up Central with 650 students, which was their stated goal, they could go well beyond that in Central. There's a much larger capacity. But that would be $5 million per year in per pupil money going to Edison instead of into the Duluth public schools. Any loss of student revenue would compound the challenges that we already face in providing excellent educational opportunities to our students. And in turn, we would lose more students. In addition to the per pupil loss, selling this property to a tax-exempt entity, which, and I'm using Edison as a shorthand. I understand that North Star Schools, Tisher Creek would be the company, the nonprofit entity that would own the land underneath, and that the Duluth Public Schools Academy is a nonprofit institution who has had a historical relationship with Edison Learning that is a for-profit institution, which they are severing this summer. I think I've got the information right, and I would like to say that I think that the misinformation hasn't come from the Duluth Public Schools or the Duluth Public Schools Academy. There has been some, but I think both sides have done a very good job trying to correct the information coming out. But they are a property tax exempt entity, and so if they purchased this 77 acres, it would be tax exempt. There would be no tax benefit to all of the taxpayers we have heard from. There would be no benefit to the city, the county, the school district in terms of property tax revenue. There would also be no relief for other property taxpayers in the community. So I think that's an important consideration in terms of the financials. We've heard from a lot of folks who are concerned about the other potential site that Edison is looking at Snowflake. That site, if you're talking about property taxes, we could still get income on Central, and they could build at Snowflake. But I think the question really is whether or not we should have a third high school in this community, a third public high school. And I think that question has been raised. It wasn't the initial part of the conversation. This was a proposal that came forward and sort of swept in. But the tide has changed a bit on that. And in the last 24 hours, we've received statements from our legislators State Representatives Jen Schultz and Eric Simonson have both indicated support for the Duluth Public Schools, as well as a concern about the public oversight of charter schools. And so I think that there's a bigger conversation that will be taking place over the next few weeks and months and maybe years about whether or not we do need to divide our students further and have this other public high school. And I welcome that conversation. I think that's an important one for us to have. So looking at this question from the bottom line for ISD 709, being responsive to our taxpayers, the financial future of the Duluth Public Schools is much more positive if we reject this offer. The second reason is a little more personal reason. I believe we have an obligation to provide a great education to all students, and we do provide a great education to any student. We don't have a lot of them. We don't exclude kids. We don't have a limit. We serve all children. On Monday night, I had a clear moment where we had two speakers that were back to back, and it showed the distinction for me. One speaker was a friend, Renee Van Nett, who is a community leader, an Ojibwe woman, very involved in our schools. And she talked about 7 generations thinking and how such a sale of the central site to Edison would do great harm to our community. And it would further harm our marginalized populations that we serve in the public schools. Coming after Renee was another woman who spoke, who indicated that she had owned a significant amount of property and talked about how school choice is great and how families and kids should be able to choose between the Duluth Public Schools or Hermantown or charter school or Marcia. And the way she said it just revealed so much privilege that they have that choice, that any child is able to choose, oh yes, I'll go to a private school, I'll go to a different school. I can just up and move. It reveals privilege. And that's the kind of thinking that that just doesn't serve all of our students. When I looked at the statistics on the Minnesota Department of Education website comparing the Duluth Public Schools and the Duluth Public Schools Academy, the one that really struck me the most is our numbers of students who experience homelessness. And that's not many, it's like 0.1% for the charter schools. Because you have to have some resources even to play the lottery, right? The Duluth Public Schools, we have over 2% of our kids experience homelessness on any given year. And we accept them. We accept them in the middle of the year. We accept them when they have to move to the other side of town. We serve them, and we will continue to serve them, whether or not Edison builds a high school. But these are the kids who will be most affected if we do sell and we reduce our financial resources as I discussed. And so those are the kids that I'm thinking about and protecting in my decision not to support the sale to Edison. I'll leave it at that.
Member Oswald.
I believe it was stated, what does this look like? And I think what this looks like moving forward is a different discussion now that we know that 4 board members are intent on voting no. I think we need to clarify with the public what this possibly means, and I think part of the presentation on Monday night that was vastly overlooked in that my understanding of that presentation was that Central High School will be bulldozed at a cost of $1.25 million to the taxpayer in order to divide up this property to make it sell. And I wish Superintendent Bronstedt could speak to that point and possibly clarify it. But I just want to make one more comment before you do, is that I feel compelled to dismiss the fact that we do have a 3rd public high school in Harbor City International School. It's a that we needed to have a conversation to see if there was some other kind of offer that could have fit us better. Superintendent Garza?
Superintendent Granta.
Thank you. The 1.25 million in demolition costs was an estimate by developers who were looking at the property and not something that we were considering taking on ourselves at this time.
Member Welty.
I would just point out that we might not be considering those demolition costs, but we've already spent close to $800,000 heating the building for 6 years while it stood empty. That could continue if we're not able to find a purchaser of the property. I would like to address some of the comments from our new member, Member Sandstead, who has demonstrated great probity, which fits the judicial temperament that I've seen since she's joined our board. She chose to spend much of her time explaining the finances that she saw them, and I see them a little differently, and I'd just like to bounce off of them. Her comment was that the $14.2 million, which we've been talking about, wasn't much. And I have to admit that divided over the next 12, 13, 14 years that we finish paying off the red plan, that's not much. But when you're facing a $3.3 million deficit, it's a lot of money. And it might help shore up this district so that we don't have to make cuts that might spur a continuing exit of students, which we have seen trickling out of our district really for the last 6 years. So $14 million I don't think should be sneezed at. And especially when you consider the list I'd forgotten about that Mrs. Welcome pointed out of all the properties and all the estimates at the beginning of the red plan that were supposed to help finance the red plan. All of those properties, most of which have not sold or rendered much money, we're supposed to raise $23 million. Well, $14 million is a big chunk of that $23 million for us to turn our back to. So far, we've only sold 2 properties of any consequence for $3,100,000, leaving us $20 million short of the projections of what we could sell our schools for. And then I'm going to rely on something that the superintendent has said on many occasions when it's been noted that we are losing students at approximately $10,000 a pop. And Member Sandstead pointed out that losing all of the students that we will probably lose anyway because the school will be built up in Snowflake would amount to $6 million. Well, as the superintendent has often pointed out to me when we've talked about the students who are leaving our district as well, every student that leaves our district is a student we don't have to spend money to educate. So we are faced with the fact that we're not going to have to educate those kids, but quite possibly this $14 million will help us to educate the kids that we do retain so that we don't lose those in the future. And Member Sandstead also pointed out that Edison is for profit, but not the Duluth Public Schools Academy. And its connection with Edison, which he pointed out is about the seats, has really for the last 19 years been minimal. Edison provided televisions early on. Its chief revenue source was selling advertising, annoying advertising for about 20 minutes at the beginning of a school day. And otherwise, now it provides some accounting services, and that will soon end. So the charter school is not a for-profit entity. And perhaps the most critical financial is we are taking a great gamble in not taking the bird in our hand and buying this property. $14 million. The property sat for 6 years empty, costing us $170,000 to heat and maintain every year. We do not know that we won't have to demolish the building at some point in the future before somebody buys it. We are at an arc in the real estate cycle, which does not suggest to me that anybody will be buying it. In fact, there's building of apartments all over the city of Duluth right now, but none of those people came to the Duluth schools and said, we'd like to buy your property. And I'm expecting there may soon be a glut in housing, so maybe we have to go back to the forlorn hope that I kept hearing people say, that maybe the Fond du Lac Reservation will want to buy the land for a casino. If we don't find a buyer, we're going to have a difficult time facing the public and explaining why we let the bird in hand go.
Thank you. Member Johnston?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to take a little bit different tack, and if Member Sandsted wants to respond to Mr. Volpe, if that's really what it was, I'd let you do that, and if that's okay with the Chair. Member Sandsted.
Okay, thank you. I'll put your light back, I'll remember our time.
I appreciate
Member
that.
Sandsted?
Thank you. I appreciate that. Member Johnston, I just had a brief comment that I forgot to mention, and that Member Wilton would find very interesting that I heard from a developer this morning who is interested in purchasing at least a portion of the property, so a portion of the property. So there is interest, and I'm confident that we'll see some movement and more interest. And I think that we need to do a better job as a district with this property. I don't think it's really been attended to since the offer fell through last year, and I think there's a lot of progress we can make there. But I'm a much more hopeful person about this than you are. But maybe it's because I had the advantage of the conversation this morning.
Member Johnston?
Yeah, I was going to not save my little piece since we've all said our piece, and I've got something to say as well. I was hoping to pass. First, the resolution would, or our substitution would pass, but it looks like it's not going to, so I'll just take this time here and say my piece, even though we're going to have 2 votes going on. So, this is my prepared statement, and I'll try to make it personal. First, I'd also like to thank the school board for allowing public comment tonight, and of course on Monday. It's a welcome change for us to listen and encourage such public comments, so thank you all, board and the chair, for making this happen. We'd like to also apologize to the many people who sent me email, but I've not been able to respond to them all. But I've received over 300 emails, plus I've got about 600 hits on my web page, and I've tried to respond to all those that I know, but please know that I have read all your comments, not the web pages yet, sorry. But even if I wasn't able to personally respond, I want everybody to know that out of land. I'd like to thank all the nice letters that I did receive. I want to say that all your ideas and alternate ideas have been absolutely amazing. And I think that many of you are thinking outside the box. I think that's what we need to be successful. I will be voting in favor of negotiating with any potential buyer, in this case, Tisher Creek. We're not here to approve any sale of property to anyone. We're only here to start negotiations. At this point, we, the school board, they can get an offer that was given to me. So let's get to work, talk to Fisher Creek, get real up-to-date advice from realtors, updated financial estimates. We'd like to say some of the reasons that I think we need to negotiate this. I'd make a couple comments first on some of this information we talked about. And just some general comments with many of the emails. Actually, about my email is running probably about 15% against selling, or 85% in favor of that, just so you know. But here's a couple comments that I said. People that didn't want us to sell. Many people dislike charter schools. But it is not our duty as a school board to debate the pros and cons of charter schools. Charter schools are here by law, passed by the state of Minnesota in 1991. At my last count, there's 42 states that allow charter schools in the U.S. Even President Obama is a big advocate of charter schools. Another misinformation we've talked about, I'm going to say it again, the actual Blue School Academy and Tisher Creek are nonprofits, period. I get emails with bold capitalized words saying for profits. With an assumption that is bad, it raises flags for me. In this case, the information about this charter school is wrong. And I wish that people would understand that the Blue Schools Academy is a non-profit by Minnesota law, as is Tisher Creek. here's the thing that really, well, I have to say something about this one because we've been hearing a lot of misinformation about special education. How Edison is somehow part of this and somehow ripping off our schools. That is another falsehood. Everyone connected with education knows that revenue provided by the state and federal governments do not cover the cost of providing special education. Very briefly, Edison gets money for special education just like we do. The only difference is Edison money is pass-through money, passed through ISD 709 because of law. ISD 709 is not subsidizing Edison with special ed, period. It pains me to hear people picking on special ed. Does Edison have more than one parent for a student in their IEP? If they do, maybe they need it. This is a level playing field. It concerns me that our lowest paid workers, our parents, and the special ed kids who cannot defend themselves are being used as political football. Back to some of the negotiations. One is why I think we should negotiate. If we don't negotiate to sell the central property, the only alternative is to hold on to it. Member Sam said that she has heard an offer. I'm waiting to hear that myself. But I'm opposed to holding on to this. Why? The long-range facility plan was developed with the understanding that we would sell the excess property to help pay our debts. So let's sell it on the right terms. Holding on to it costs, I think, closer to $200,000 per year. The only offer we've had that I've been told about, and those have been others, was for $10 million, and that fell through. So let's keep our fingers crossed and pray that someone besides Edison will come along with $14 million. I've also talked to realtors, developers in the last week, and they will say it probably won't happen. Should we decide to develop it ourselves? That's the other option. Sure, we can tear down Old Central and STC, survey roads, add utilities, make housing developments, but there's a problem with that. A developer already had that idea and he backed out of it. There's another problem with this. Let's develop it ourselves. We are schools, we aren't developers. And raising Old Central and developing this site will take about $2 million. Where are we going to get that $2 million? Go down to the bank, ask for a loan. I think you all know what the banker would say. No, and you're crazy. So let's dip into the general fund? Absolutely not. I will do everything I can to stop dipping into the general fund to develop property that we're not capable of developing. And I cannot operate by crossing my fingers and praying. That's not how we can make decisions on a school board. There have been many ideas brought up on these negotiations, and that's why I wish we could have got to that, but it appears already this board doesn't want to. But I'm going to throw those out. I was hoping to convince some people that it was worthwhile to negotiate. Here's some ideas that have been told to me by all these great emails that I've been getting. Put a cap in Edison's enrollment. They've already said they would be willing to do that. Here's another idea. Sell Hawks, exchange Central for North Star Academy, move the administration to North Star. Kind of weird, but hey, we're thinking outside the box. I say, I'd like to talk about that. Here's another one. Share programs with Edison. Let's learn from each other. Let's help each other. Let's stop fighting. Let's turn the page for a change. There's another idea. Always sell the high school and keep SDC for technology, or move the administration up there and sell Hawks. This last idea, which is coming from the teachers, I advocated for 8 years ago, and we all know what happened to that. Would I support moving back to Central or STC? You darn right I would. I like seeing these ideas. But I'm going to wait for a proposal and support to come from the administration, the Chamber of Commerce, and the teachers union. I'm not going to hold my breath. These are all again great ideas that I think could have been developed by entering into negotiations. There's another reason that we should negotiate to sell this property. Our schools need alternatives and change. Our schools need money. Without selling some of this property that was supposed to have been sold, we don't have enough money. I'm well aware of the dangers of selling to Edison and the likelihood of losing enrollment, and that concerns me a lot, particularly being from West Duluth. Of course, we have to weigh the long-term impact of possibly losing enrollment. We also have to look at why have we been losing enrollment and how to stop. Why aren't we asking that question? A fraction of the energy that has been put into blaming Edison had been put into improving our graduation rates, improving student proficiency, lowering our class sizes, removing our achievement gap, we would not be here today discussing this at all. Let's look at the current situation that needs to change. I'm saying this again because this is, I've said this many times to the board, a lot of the public hasn't heard this, and I repeat it again because it's absolutely critical that this will be weighing into our decision what we're going to do tonight. In the last 10 years, ISD 709 has lost over 2,000 students. Our enrollment is now 8,250 students. This is the lowest number of students in probably 100 years. The lowest in 100 years. Last year, Denfeld graduated as the lowest number since Denfeld was built in 1926. That was even after we combined Denfeld and Central. Obviously, few of the Central students went to Denfeld. They went elsewhere. They're already gone. Let me say that again. Last year, Denfeld graduated as the lowest number of students ever, 180 graduates. Last year, East graduated 360 students. Yes, all area schools are not as large as they were 40 years ago, but I'm talking about now. If you look at other schools, Proctor, Cloquet, Hermantown, Esco, etc., and yes, even the Duluth Schools Academy, you will find that they're growing their student population in the last 10 years. We haven't. Let's take a look at the graduation rates. The percentage of those graduating in Duluth Public Schools has one of the lowest rates in Minnesota. Let's look at student achievement. According to our World's Best Workforce and Integration Report, we failed to meet any of the proficiency goals in either reading or math. None of them. In our regular accountability test, Denfeld has math scores that are 60% of East. We have reading scores that are half of East. Let's look at ethnic results. African American, Native American math proficiency scores are half of white American students. I will not accept that. And it is not okay to say that, hey, other schools are just as bad. No. I know of schools that have eliminated this achievement gap, and I want to have that to happen here too. Another thing which I wish the teachers would look at. The last 10 years, we've eliminated 275 FTE teacher positions. This has all happened without Edison having a high school. You can't blame Edison for that. There's one issue that is largely to blame for much of what I've described. We have a large amount of debt. We're paying close to $24 million per year for debt payments. Some of that is coming out of the general fund, the classrooms. In fact, as of this year, $34,242,367 has been pulled out of the general fund, the classrooms that pay our debts. I'm bringing up this data because we have problems. We need change, we need money, we need leadership. If we can make a deal with South Central, let's take that money and improve our schools. If we made a deal to sell Old Central, the requirement of me agreeing to that is that we, ISD 709, will take that money and put it into the classrooms. If we're only going to put it in the bank, don't sell Central at all. I want this money, if we get 14, if we got whatever it was, we negotiate, put that into the classrooms, not the bank. I'm very glad that we're looking at what's happening in our schools. I'm very thankful for all the discussions that we have had, and that has been generated in the last 5 days, because Edison brought this up. I have every hope that with all the help of the great teachers, I have every hope that with all the great help of our great teachers and staff, with our parents, students, with support from the school board, that we will beat Edison at their game and stop losing students. For starters, we need to start bringing back 7-period days and 0 hour. I want all of your ideas on how, whether or not we sell Central to do that. We have a critical mass and critical thoughts gathered here today and on Monday and all the emails that I've got. Let's not waste it by bashing Edison. The emails that I've seen from the teachers on Edison are appalling. Let's work with them. Let's take their money if we can make a deal. Let's beat them at their own game. Dental Robotics is beating their competition. And we can grow ISD 709 Duluth Public Schools.
Thank you, Member Johnson. Member Lefferkamp.
Yeah, I guess, am sitting here thinking, as I've been doing a lot all week, and the last 2.5 years that I've been on the school board, what's been probably the most frustrating when I'm out at meetings or I'm out in the community in the many ways I am, and when I'm sitting at these board meetings, is hearing the misinformation. And we've kind of thrown that around a lot tonight about misinformation, and certainly there has been a lot coming all over Facebook, all over our emails, in conversations, and what I hope happens after tonight is that we all really, as a board, really take a look at the information we're getting out to the community. I feel like that's been a big role, and I've talked about this before up here. What I found one of my roles as a school board member has been is correcting information, pointing people to resources. What I appreciated about Monday night was, frankly, the staff that did speak from our district that also worked day to day in our district and had some very accurate information about what's happening in our public schools. And I appreciated Superintendent Grunset's presentation where it really laid out, particularly on has Central been sitting there for 6 years or not? No, Central hasn't been sitting there for 6 years. And there was a good history there. And I too am, like Member Zansted, I'm hopeful. I was going to close my statements that I kind of abbreviated with saying, I am hopeful for our marketing plan. I am hopeful, like Chair Harala, that we have some great opportunities to work with the city and work with the county. I'm hopeful that I'm hopeful because of the 2,000 staff we have in our district, from our custodians to our food service workers, to our paras, to our teachers, to our administrators. What I've heard a lot this week is a huge commitment that I know is already there to our kids, to all kids, and to our community. And so, you know, the misinformation is just totally frustrating for me, and I hope as a board, again, we really think and do a check on ourselves on the information we're getting out to the public. You know, we have an obligation to get accurate information out to the public. And I guess I just kind of wanted to touch on that. And I also want to say, again, we need to move on to do the marketing plan that we have talked about and that we have put on hold because of the offer we had. And it is clear that on this board there is not going to be support to change our policies. And we need to move on so we can market that property and that doesn't mean we can't continue to discuss public education in Duluth and discuss the different choices of education. And, you know, I certainly have lots of friends and that are choosing other options, and that's great. Conversation I'd love to have with them always is, why do you choose other options? Same conversation I like to have with kids that go to our schools and parents that go to our schools. Why are you choosing our Duluth Public Schools? And there's wonderful stories out there why they're choosing our schools. So I guess I just wanted to share those thoughts.
Thank you. Member Johnston.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's appropriate to respond when people talk about information. Information has to be correct, and I'd like to have them show their evidence. If you don't like the evidence that I have, then show me why I'm wrong. I challenge anybody here to show me anything that I've said here today is wrong. Everything that is correct, the amount of money we take out of the general fund is correct, the amount of students that we've lost is correct. And if somebody doesn't agree with me, don't say that I have the wrong information. Tell me what the right information is. If you don't have the right information, I would appreciate you don't ridicule what I say. Marketing, it's obvious this isn't going to pass, but I'm going to do everything that I can, and I'm hoping the teachers will support me to keep $2 million from being pulled out of the general fund again to go into marketing Central High School by demolishing the school. And we'll do everything that I can to get public opinion to make sure that that money stays in our public schools and our classrooms, not being used to develop a potential pie in the sky thing that we have no ability and experience in doing.
Member Johnston, thank you for that comment. I just want to be clear that to reiterate what the superintendent said a little bit ago, that the $1.25 million was for tearing down the building was what the developer had said, and was not the plan of that administration. No one has talked about us becoming a developer. We've talked about marketing, and here are some things that we could do moving forward. We can work closer. We can bring to the as I became chair of the board this year, I had a number of meetings with other leaders that are elected in our community, and took time to find out how they wanted to build relationship. And I think this is the time to put those relationships to the test. It's a way that we can work intergovernmentally to answer some of these significant problems that we've had in being able to sell this issue and sell the property at hand, looking at how we do break it into the 3 different parcels. We need partnership with the city on that. We need partnership and the county as well too. Working with both of them and having them come to the table and working aggressively as a district, finding a timeline and being public about that. And that's one thing that I want to highlight this week and appreciate from our community is that many people did reach out, and they're, each of us have our own number of people that reach out to us individually, as a whole, phone calls, emails, stops this evening as I picked up Member Sandsted at the Ojibwe and Spanish immersion and Lowell kindergarten information. Thank you, Roundup. A couple of different folks that are there, but I'll come back to the fact that we have more that we can do as a district in general with marketing, with moving forward. It's something we have been talking about a lot, and now we need to put the rubber to the road. So, thank you. Member Johnson, do you have a response to that? Okay, briefly. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know what the price is going to be. That's one of my problems is before we do anything, we should be given a price. And I don't want to go ahead with this development until I get a price. And I know how much it took to tear down Laura Mac. I believe it was $800,000. And we've got, 4 times as, maybe not Laura Mac was big. We've got at least twice as many, plus we've got 2 buildings, plus we've got football fields and tennis courts, blah, blah, blah. And I can't, last estimate that I heard on Morgan Park was going to be over $1 million, I believe, when I talked to the developer on that. So yeah, we're talking about a lot of money, and yeah, I really don't want that money going. I guess I'll make last plea to the teachers here that I understand why our concern. I'm really concerned about loss of enrollment too. Isn't going to happen. I'm asking you to help us stop pulling debt payments out of the general fund. I need your help on doing that. That's $3.5 million this year. I need your help to stop that. Because I want this money to go to the schools too.
Thank you, Member Johnston. Member Sandsted.
Since everybody's had a chance to share, I think we should call the question.
The question has been called on this evening. When a question is called, this is my first question called as chair, so when a question is called, we do put the motion to a vote. It suspends discussion. So the question has been raised with regard, I just want to clarify that we are voting on the resolution B-3-16-3358, which is the substitution resolution that Member Welty put forward. I appreciate a lot of discussion from colleagues. So a vote for this means that you would be voting to, or a vote of an aye would be for this, for continuing and initiating negotiations with this. A vote in the nay favor would be ceasing, or would that be that we wouldn't be. So the question is, I'm just clarifying.
Yeah, is it, I'm not sure if the question is, are you substituting the resolution, or is the question the resolution itself? Are you voting on substitution or the resolution?
That's a good question.
One moment, I'll tell you later. Member Welty.
I think that's a good point, Superintendent. I did move to substitute this motion with the one that we were given when we came here, and I guess I will stick with that. I thought that this would be a superior one, and we'll find out in a few moments if we will substitute this with the original motion that no one has yet made.
Member Johnston.
Well,
Wait, actually, no, there's no discussion on this. The question has actually been called. So, did you have a clarification on that? I was clarifying that this is... Okay. Member Johnson.
When the question is called, which
Yes,
I'm
Member
in
Johnson,
favor of it, but
continue.
there has to be a vote to, when you call the question, there does have to be a vote on that.
Yes.
Then after that
Thank you.
passes,
Yep.
then we go through, and then we have to have the vote on the substitute amendment, then we have to go back and have the vote on the other amendment that was
Yep.
substituted before. So just.
Thank you. Yep,
just,
I'm with it. I'm just making sure that we're going the process and was making sure that I can give a chance to walk through all back through those. So we are going to vote on the calling of the question. All those in favor of calling the question? Aye. Those opposed? Motion of calling the question passes 7-0. Now we have a vote on moving to substitute the pending resolution, or on a vote on the substituted resolution, B-3-16-3358. Member Sandsted, point of order.
I think we do have to move on whether or not we're substituting, or we have to vote on whether or not we're substituting before we're actually voting on.
All right, well, thank you. We will, let's move to substitute, which should have happened prior to any of the discussion. I appreciate this. So all those in favor of substituting the pending resolution?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry, so on just substituting, sorry, we're going to start over again. Sorry, all those in favor of substituting the pending resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion to substitute this passes 5-2. So then, all those in favor of the resolution, Member Johnson, we voted to substitute, we called the question, we voted to substitute, we are going to, so it substitutes that other one, so we won't be voting on that other one, we're voting on this one. And,
So did you just vote, you just voted on Member Welty's substitute resolution?
No, we voted, no.
That's what
No,
you should
we
have been
voted,
voting. That's what you should have been voting on, right?
we voted on whether or not to substitute on whether or not to substitute. So it's this instead of this. So it's Member Welty's, we will now be voting on Member Welty's resolution instead of the resolution that was printed initially.
This is as simple as not going to get.
Member Johnston, briefly.
Okay, and there was a motion that was given to us. Member Welty had a substitute motion.
So we voted,
We voted on that, the substitute motion passed, is that correct?
we did not earlier. We did not vote on
What
whether
was
or
the
not.
vote when we just voted on
We
that?
just,
But that was before 3 vote.
we voted to call the question,
Yeah.
and then we voted on whether or not to substitute this for this, and now we will vote on the resolution that has been substituted.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
Thank
well,
you.
after we have that, there's always an opportunity to have discussion once we've come to that
even though it's
point.
been
And It'll
substituted,
take a very quick question, and I'm asking you to let me have a very slow photo. This won't be an 8-minute talk.
Member Johnson, the question has been called. We are to vote on this.
No. Well, then I will raise a point of order again.
Member Johnson.
There was a motion, and there was a motion to substitute. The motion to substitute, but now we have to vote on the motion itself.
Yes.
It's a very simple thing. And now we're voting on the motion to itself, and you always have to have debate on the motion.
Yes.
So
Debate
you
on the
can call your
motion.
question only on the
Thank you, Member
substitute.
Johnston. Thank you. Member Welty.
Yes, Member Johnston is quite correct. I will, however, say, for my part, I feel that we have already had all the discussion that is pertinent, although I'm happy to stay here till 11 o'clock and repeat it all. So I will say no more. I'm quite prepared to vote on the motion if other people don't have anything else to add. I will take that.
Member Johnston, put your right back on, please. Member Welty, would you like to finish your comment? Member Johnston.
And all I was going to say is that I don't have anything more to say, and I know Member Sandstead, if the motion called the question, I'm willing to, I just want to make sure that we all had our little chance to say something. I want to make sure somebody has that opportunity. I'm done with my say, and I don't think anybody else has anything to say. I just want to make sure everybody got a chance.
Thank you.
The public has to know what we think.
Thank you. Thank you.
So,
Thank you. So to clarify, after the many processes of Robert's rules, the motion, so now we're going to be voting on behalf of the substitute resolution at hand. All those in favor of B-3-16-3358, say aye.
Aye.
All those against? Nay. The motion fails 3-4. Is there further discussion? Take a moment again to reiterate the thanks of the board for a lot of public comment, a lot of feedback, and we look forward to continuing to market this property. Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned.